All right, we're going to do another audio-only podcast for right now. This is because I've just received an alert on my phone, and then I looked it up to confirm it, even though I don't think I had to confirm it because there's video that's plain as day, and it's featured on Israeli TV, in which the health minister of that country, the health minister of Israel, Nitzan Horowitz, is admitting that Israel's green report is not based on epidemiology. And he says imposing green pass rules on certain venues is needed only to pressure members of the public to get vaccinated and not for medical reasons, Israeli Health Minister Nitzan Horowitz said on Sunday ahead of the weekly cabinet meeting. Horowitz was caught on a hot mic telling this to Interior Minister Ayelet Shaked, who was also unaware that the conversation was being taped and would be broadcast on Channel 12 News. So I wanted to stop here and say, I do commend Channel 12 for doing the right thing, recording it and publishing it, because I'm sure that it doesn't matter at this point which country you're living in. There's a lot of pressure to suppress news like this, where people who are in the position of power to determine policy with regards to vaccines and COVID are shielded from actual public scrutiny. And that's certainly the case here in the US, where while we do see criticism of Anthony Fauci, there is this ridiculous cult around him that prevents him from actually facing any accountability. Also, the justice system is not really taking seriously the allegations that he was involved in the funding of gain-of-function research and consciously knew about it, and that he's been lying about his foreknowledge of that endeavor up until now. So he says, epidemiologically it's true, said Horowitz, adding, the thing is, I'm telling you, our problem is people who don't get vaccinated. We need to influence them a bit. Otherwise, we won't get out of this pandemic situation. Currently, he said, there is a kind of universality to the green pass system other than at malls, where I think it should be imposed, because now it's clear that it applies nowhere. Horowitz went on to explain that the only way for there to be no exceptions, since people wonder why it's okay not to have a pass for pools, then why for water parks, outdoor facilities, and sports, is to have the regulations be uniformly enforced. On the one hand, he added, we don't want to do things that have no medical justification. But I'm telling you that we have a problem. The Green Pass isn't even being enforced, certainly not in the Arab sector where it doesn't exist at all. And I'm seeing the effect on the hospitals. Horowitz and Shaked were joined by Intelligence Minister Elazar Stern, who, also unaware that the conversation was on tape, expressed disgust with the unvaccinated. It's annoying that they're taking up the hospital beds, he said, to which Horowitz replied, those in intensive care, yes. The Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett subsequently told the cabinet that tolerance toward those who choose not to get vaccinated has ended, according to Channel 12. So I want to say this, that this disgusts me as a person who, first of all, I am Jewish. I do have, most of my family is Israeli. And both of my parents were born in Israel. I served in the Israeli military as I was legally required under law. And as somebody who cares for my family there, cares for the people who live there, especially not just my family, but friends and for the entire country, I think that this is one of the most degrading things I've ever seen the Israeli government undertake. And I understand that there are people out there who will say, that they stand on the other side of many issues concerning Israel, but you have to, at this point, at least acknowledge that this is a case of the Israeli government going after their own people and treating them as if they are subjects, not as citizens. And it's very much opened my eyes to things that I'd already been I guess subconsciously aware of or knew about, but wasn't really like wanting to go in depth into them about. the philosophy of the public in countries like Israel, where there's this implicit trust of what the government says. It doesn't mean that everything that the government does is evil, but it does mean that you have to look out for your own individual self-interest and the self-interest of the people around you and your family, because they are not going to do it. They're actually going to treat you the way that these three creeps, these three ministers in the government are. And Ayelet Shaked, this is a little bit of a surprise concerning her, but politician nonetheless. It's safe to say I'm a bit disappointed. Nitzan Horowitz, I could expect nothing less of him, because he is from the far, far left Meretz party, and they're the type of people who they would be on a par with the Ocasio-Cortezes here in America, where they believe in a lot of this identitarian and intersectional philosophy. I believe he was the first openly gay person elected to the parliament, the Israeli Knesset, who was actively in a relationship or married to another same-sex partner and everything. So he's been on this far left binge for many, many years. He's probably on the cusp of the furthest left that there is in Israel. There are parties that are further to the left than him. And the third person who is featured in this article, Elazar Stern, is somebody who I'm also familiar with, because when I was in the military, he was the head of what was called at the time the Human Resources branch of the military. Under him, they changed it from the Manpower Division to the Human Resources Division, because supposedly it was going to make the Army more humane and more modern and more forward-looking. Well, guess what? Elazar Stern, I can tell you, is one of the most despicable military officers that I've ever heard of. If you're talking about from the standpoint of a soldier, of a service person, because he was blatantly, I can say that, and I don't want to go too far into depth. He was a person who was perfectly okay with certain situations in the military that put me physically and physically in danger, right? In terms of the way that I was serving, and also preventing me from getting the training that I needed as a part of the unit that I was in. So our unit was not properly trained for a combat situation, but we were in one of the most actively threatened sectors of the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria, depending on what you call it. So this is a person who, as a policy maker, I know that he does not value the individual. He does not value people as elements in and of themselves, as discrete people, but he's rather somebody who is perfectly willing to be an institutionalist. He believed in his position as the head of the Human Resources Division in order to protect the institution of the military in Israel, and not protect the people that make up the institution, the people who are the soldiers and servicemen and women who make it up. And I think that that's really something that I aim to tell people who ask me about a career in the military, not just in Israel, by the way, but here in the United States. I don't really know people from other countries to the degree where I know that they joined their militaries, but you have to understand that institutions look out for the institution's interests. They don't look out for the interests of the people who work there. And that goes for corporations, that goes for bureaucracies, that goes for any large group. So that's one of the reasons I became a small L libertarian, a Ron Paul libertarian, believing in the notion that people ought to take as much control over their own daily lives and personal welfare, as opposed to believing in some overarching institution that'll do it for you. And to say the least, this is one of the most enraging things that I can see. And one small tidbit here, when Horowitz said offhand that it isn't even being enforced, certainly not in the Arab sector, where it doesn't exist at all. So that those are his words. I want to say a bravo to the Arab community in Israel, who certainly there's issues with them and Israeli society at large, and going in both directions. But you have to give them a round of applause for their decision to object to this. Why should they believe in this pharmaceutical cure-all, which we see has been completely ineffective? It's brought the country to a standstill. I feel that it really is one of those moments where we have to hang our head in shame as people who are associated with those of us that are associated with Israel, right? Me being somebody who formerly served in their military. Now, I haven't lived there for many years. I've lived in the United States since I think 2009. I also grew up in the United States. Living in Israel, I was largely treated as an American, more so than an Israeli by many people, unless they couldn't hear my accent. So it's a little bit of an ambiguous identity for me, and I'm not going to pretend that there's some sort of common cultural ground that I have with Israelis, because I think that was the real reason that I moved back. I had very little cultural identity with their their lay culture, their secular culture. Certainly some of the religious culture I have identity with, but I certainly have family identity with them. I certainly have ethnic identity with them. I certainly have certain connections that I have professionally and friendships with people there. And I do have this, not just this frustration, but this bitterness that has been going on for years. And this just puts the exclamation point on top of it. We are looking at a country that was meant to be a safe haven for persecuted people from around the world who have one thing in common: they belong to the Jewish religion or they have Jewish heritage. And what are they doing? They're persecuting their own people. And to be honest with you, I think the Arabs who refuse this, they are right. You should acknowledge sometimes when people, even if there's major differences with them, major differences of opinion and even deep-seated prejudices towards one another, you should acknowledge when another person is right, even if you don't have the best relationship with them. So that's about it. I hope that you're all doing well and that you're healthy and that your families have decided on the best medical path forward. It's certainly a big topic of discussion in my household and in my family's household, the people, my extended family. And it's a difficult time for everyone, and I don't know the way out of it, but I know that the one thing we can't do is become complacent and just bow to authority. So please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on Rumble, on BitChute, as well as Odyssey, and follow me there. You can also follow me if you want to chat a little bit in the comments on Gab and on Minds. And then you can also find me on Subscribestar if you want to support me. And have a great day.